From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The battle over water.
That puts you behind the 8 ball when you can't water your crops.
We hear from one Texas citrus producer who's concerned this may be his last citrus crop. Reaction to more of President-elect Trump's key cabinet picks.
He's just too controversial.
As rains arrive just in time.
November is game time more than any other month.
How recent rainfall could be a game changer for ag exports right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Just a couple of weeks ago, things looked pretty grim for moving grain along the Mississippi River. But what a difference a few rounds of rain can make. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, the rain comes at a critical time for moving the soybean crop.
Yeah, Clinton, the Mississippi River is getting some welcome relief with recent rains in the Mississippi watershed. In fact, the rebound in water levels is allowing the U.S. Coast Guard to lift its restrictions on the lower part of the river for barge transportation. Now, that's critical for the soybean industry, which is in the peak export window here in November. Water levels on the Mississippi River have rebounded considerably with rainfall received throughout the region in late October through November. These charts from the U.S. Geological Survey show the recent lowest level at the river gauge in St. Louis was minus 2.7 feet on October 14th, while the lowest level in Memphis was minus 10.4 feet on November 3rd. But water levels have risen with the recharge.
Water levels have rebounded as a result of that, and to the point where the Coast Guard has no longer have any restrictions on the lower part of the Mississippi River where the problems tend to really manifest themselves.
So barge companies have increased loading volumes and the number of barges attached together with expanded channel width.
Barge companies, you're seeing them not operating at full capacity that they normally do, but you are seeing them, again, increase the loading to a greater water depth, adding more barges to the flotilla, and so we're hoping for that trend to continue.
This lowers barge freight rates and improves basis levels and cash grain and soybean prices for U.S. farmers. Steenhoek says this is all welcome during the critical window for soybean exports.
November is game time more than any other month, and so you need to make sure you've got your supply chain operating at full throttle during this key month.
Plus, there's additional moisture falling in the watershed and projections for more in the future, which he says is key for a predictable inland waterway system. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
The next rainmaker is making its way across the southern plains. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter has a look ahead for us.
Taking a look at some of the rain that we're actually going to be seeing this week, we're actually eyeing a few systems in the United States. This first one actually down south here, really around the Texas and Oklahoma region, where it's going to start and really expand by Tuesday. Again, this is Tuesday at 9 in the morning. We can just see that it's also pulling some Gulf moisture over there by New Orleans all the way up through Indiana and through Wisconsin as well. And also notice some of the snow that we're seeing out west. Now, Wednesday, we could be seeing, or a lot of people in the country could actually be seeing some of their first flakes of the year. So let's go ahead and watch that. As we can see, that system just going to be turning over the Great Lakes region and really giving everybody up there a cooler shot of air. Again, something we're keeping a very close eye on. As we can see, the other part of the country, that is the western plains, going to be dominated by high pressure. And another farm is wrapping up harvest. Tom Farms in Leesburg, Indiana, pronouncing that harvest is finished. They thank their team and saying that they're proud of all of them. Very cool there. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
President-elect Trump is continuing to nominate people for key positions in his cabinet. The latest, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as Secretary to the Department of Health and Human Services. Kennedy, a former Democrat who ran as an independent in this year's presidential race, abandoned his bid after striking a deal to give Mr. Trump his endorsement with a promise to have a role in health policy in the administration. As we have previously reported, Kennedy is critical of modern industrial agriculture, arguing current practices are damaging human health, soil, and water resources. Now, he recently said that he wants to create a, quote, win-win policy for farmers, consumers, and the environment by making America healthy again. Kennedy has also argued unhealthy food, medicines, and water have fueled the rise of chronic disease in America.
But I will tell you, Trump will get his cabinet people who he wants. Reason? The Senate will have at least 53 under their control. So so the president's going to get the cabinet. I think any president should get the cabinet they deserve, with perhaps one caveat. RFK Jr. will not get approved by the incoming U.S. Senate. He's just too controversial.
Now, Kennedy has also said he wants to end the, quote, FDA's war on public health, including what he called aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, and raw milk. Mr. Trump also announcing he is nominating North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum to lead the Department of the Interior. North Dakota is the third largest oil-producing state in the country. It also has more than 4 million acres under federal oversight. Burgum would manage the more than 500 million acres of federal land, as well as the fossil fuels and minerals that lie beneath the surface. Speaking of North Dakota, that state's utility regulators have approved a carbon dioxide pipeline that would span 5 Midwestern states. Now, we've been keeping you updated on the plan involving Summit Carbon Solutions. Friday's decision by the state's Public Service Commission is seen as a victory for the company. Its proposed $8 billion, 2,500-mile pipeline system would carry tons of CO2 emissions for storage deep underground in North Dakota. The gas would come from 57 ethanol plants in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Iowa. Now, Summit has said it has secured 80% of the necessary land through voluntary easements. Commodity markets fought to get back into the green to end last week. We'll talk about the biggest market movers next. And later, we're off to the Lone Star State, where a battle over water has the state's citrus growers concerned they may be seeing the last Texas crop ever. That story today in the country. A big announcement from auto and truck maker General Motors. The company announcing at the end of last week it's laying off about 1,000 workers worldwide. It's reported those impacted are mostly salaried, but some blue-collar workers were affected as well. GM said in a statement it has to operate efficiently and have the right team structure to focus on its top priorities. Its chief financial officer said last month the company was on track to reach a goal of cutting $2 billion in costs by the end of this year. Now, GM has about 150,000 employees around the world. Corn and soybeans reversed the negative trend on Friday. AgDay's Michelle Rook has more on if commodities have finally won the battle against a stronger dollar in markets down.
Well, grain staging a recovery on Friday. Naomi Bloom is with us with analysis. And Naomi, we had such a horrible week to start. Why did we see the bounce on Friday? You know, was it just short covering?
Yeah, we've definitely had lower prices this past week. And Friday, we got down to some major support levels on charts: corn, soybeans, and wheat. And after the quiet trade on Friday night, Friday morning, the end users, the buyers, they came in and they were buying because of technical support holding, and also buying back some of those short positions that they had been sellers of earlier in the week. So it's definitely nice to see some green on the screen heading into the weekend.
Yeah, so we have been somewhat sensitive here because of the lack of news to things coming out in terms of Trump administration appointments, the higher dollar. Do you anticipate as we start a new week that's going to kind of be the mantra?
Yeah, markets are going to continue to focus on all of those little tidbits of news. We're going to keep an eye on exports, going to be watching weather in South America. So I'm looking for this upcoming week to probably see prices trade in a little bit more of a sideways pattern. But one thing to be aware of, there is a pretty strong seasonal tendency as we head towards Thanksgiving that corn and soybean prices start to find some support and work higher towards Christmas. In fact, the last decade, the average corn rally had been 33 cents in that time frame, and the average rally on the soybeans had been closer to 90 cents. Good news if you're a producer who has corn or beans in the bin. Just remember to let go and make those cash sales as we get closer to Christmas time.
With all this uncertainty that you talk about, what are the funds going to do? What's their next move here? Because they haven't really committed one way or the other, have they?
They have not. And that's the thing. So usually, there's also an old expression, follow the money. And right now the funds are pretty darn neutral in the corn market. They're still a little bit short in wheat and in soybeans. But for the most part, they're sitting and waiting too. And so what are they sitting and waiting for? All of the things that we have been talking about.
Thanks for joining us, Naomi Bloom with Total Farm Marketing. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Here is a look actually at some of the moisture that's going to be in the top foot actually of the surface. Pretty much seeing how much moisture is available, and again, just that top portion of the soil. And actually what we can use this map to do is pretty much see where places in the country actually saw some pretty recent rainfall and substantial rainfall at that. And we can see, again, southern plains and parts of the Four Corner states, especially out here in eastern Colorado, where they saw that significant snow event. Again, you got to think about that. That was 2 weeks ago. Really helped to put a lot of water in the soil. And we can also see parts down south, just north of Florida, actually seeing a good amount of moisture. And unfortunately, where those drought-stricken areas are starting to pop up on the map are showing up again in those yellows and actually red colorations there. So it's something, of course, that we're keeping a rather close eye on. Here's our jet stream, and a very dynamic jet stream at that. We're about to see a few systems moving through, and especially one dominant system that'll be turning through, and actually, like I said in my first forecast there, giving folks a first chance and look at winter. So putting this in motion tomorrow, we can see a trough is starting to develop by midweek. Take a look at this blast of cold air up here by the Dakotas. That's going to sink south and deepen, especially when it gets over to the Great Lakes. That's actually going to be moving towards the East Coast. And again, because of that deepening low with all the cool air there, a lot of folks could be seeing, again, their first snowfall of the year, large ridging, really firing back up again on the second half of the country there. Here's our precipitation outlook that's pretty much mirroring exactly what we just saw in our jet stream. We're looking at the Great Lakes states, above average with the snow and rain there, and unfortunately a deficit out west where they're seeing ridging take place. Holland, Michigan, a high of 57 degrees and a low of 49 degrees with mostly cloudy conditions. Freeland, Washington, we're talking 46 degrees and 40 degrees with showers. And finally, Duluth, Minnesota, 47 degrees and a low of 42 degrees.
Equipment prices have been trending lower, but will that continue through December? Machinery Pete is next. And later, the border battle over water has citrus growers in Texas worried about the future. We'll pick up the issue today in the country. Could we see a surge in used equipment prices here at the end of the year? Machinery Pete joins us with a look at what past history tells us.
Well, folks, the last 21 years in November and December, auction prices and used farm equipment values have gone up 18 times, remained level twice, and they've only dropped once. Now, the reason, of course, we all know it's tax policy, IRS Section 179, farmers year-end looking for an equipment purchase to drive down that tax bite. Now, the only year, the last 21 years, I saw values fall in November, December was in 2015. Now, coming into this November and December here in 2024, very interesting because, of course, used values have been sliding lower throughout the year, but I got a report, at least through the middle of November, auction pricing on good used equipment, particularly 10 plus years old, very strong. Now, here's a couple of examples from last Thursday. On a farm auction in Mount Union, Iowa by Merit Auctions, this 2012 Case H Puma 170 with 1,080 hours on it sold for $99,000. That's the highest auction price I've ever seen on a Puma 170 sold without a loader. Now, that same day, last Thursday, farm auction up in Clyde, North Dakota by the Steffes Group, This 2014 Challenger MT865C only had 821 hours on it, so you figure it's going to sell high, but even so, it brought $305,000, second highest auction price ever on an MT865C. And a week before, on a November 8th farm auction in Wausau, Illinois by Wheeler Auctions and Real Estate, the Sharp John Deere 2010 John Deere 9670 SDS combine, 1,788 engine hours on it, no heads, sold for $140,000, third highest auction price this year on a 9670.
All right, thanks, Pete. Well, up next, a look at the future of citrus in Texas. As growers face water shortages, they worry this could be the last citrus crop ever grown. That story in the country.
Machinery Pete on Ag Day is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Firestone Ag now offers Bridgestone tractor tires, the ultimate lineup of tires engineered to deliver enhanced wear life, durability, and ride comfort on the road. To learn more, talk to your local certified Firestone Ag dealer.
It's a bittersweet harvest in the Rio Grande Valley. This year's citrus crop looks promising, but what's not promised is a crop for next year. As the Texas Farm Bureau shows us, water battles with Mexico have some fearing this could be the last citrus crop in Texas.
My name's Dale Murden. I'm a citrus grower down here in the Rio Grande Valley. We are right on the Rio Grande River, south of Pharr, Texas, in a grove that is one of my favorite places in the valley. You get a little bit of everything down there. You know, if the weather cooperates, there's nothing sweeter than a Texas grapefruit. So 70% of what we grow down here is this Texas Rio Red grapefruit. It's that nice dark red grapefruit that we're famous for. I'd say we're probably at half of our normal production. We look to probably have about 7 million cartons of citrus this year, which average, you know, back before the freeze, we were up to 14 million. So while it's down, the quality is excellent and the size is excellent. So real optimistic about this year. I think the season has started off very well. We've been in a period of lingering drought, water battles with Mexico. That puts you behind the 8 ball when you can't water your crops. Water battles have been something probably going on my whole life, maybe since the treaty actually started. 1944, 2 treaties were done, the Colorado River and the Rio Grande River. Colorado River side, the headwaters are in the United States, goes into Mexico. We pay them about 1.5 million acre feet a year. The Rio Grande Treaty, the headwaters are in Mexico, namely the state of Chihuahua. They owe us 350,000 acre feet a year on this side. Rarely, if ever anymore, do they willingly make a payment unless they have overflows and can't capture it. Currently, they're behind, getting close to 1 million acre feet of water, going into the 4th year of a 5-year cycle. Really prohibits you from doing any planting at all. You know, do I plant trees? Do I not plant trees? Do I water this crop but not this crop? Very difficult to plan your future when you can't count on what a treaty obliges them to do. And they just refuse. They're growing agriculture in Chihuahua by leaps and bounds. The vegetable side, well, they've already had to cut back and lay people off. They can't go into the spring thinking they can plant onions or watermelons or vegetables without water. It's very serious, very serious. We're losing ground. The sugar mill just went out of business. 52 years in business and they're gone. The question is citrus next? Well, I hope not. We're in the worst shape going into a winter and next spring than I've ever seen. Lake levels are at about 20%. Typically during the summer, there's a storm event that'll bring those levels up. Didn't happen this year. Chihuahua's used it all up down there. They're in the situation now, probably they don't even know what they're gonna do. They use the water. You know, citrus has been here 120 years. You just don't want to think about that happening. I try to think positive, farmer optimism, right? Somehow, some way, the State Department needs to draw a line in the sand and say, look, we always comply with our obligations on the Colorado side. Why can't y'all on the other side? I mean, it's just common sense. When I started in the 80s, we had, you know, probably close to 100,000 acres of citrus. Now we're down to, you know, arguably about 25. Is this going to be the last citrus crop? No. I'm not even going to think that way. No. Not on my watch. I'm not going to go down without a fight.
And our thanks to the Texas Farm Bureau for that story. Now, just last week, a new water agreement was announced with Mexico. It would amend an 80-year water treaty between Mexico and the U.S. to allow sharing of the Rio Grande. Officials say the agreement is aimed at ensuring more regular water deliveries from Mexico to the U.S. Texas Ag Commissioner Sid Miller called the agreement a step in the right direction, but said, quote, "Promises don't water our fields, sustain our livestock, or supply our cities," end quote. Now, last month, he issued an executive order allowing Texas farmers and ranchers to tap directly into the Rio Grande. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.